everyone. Thanks for coming out to our talk. So if you are interested in hearing a little bit more about some alerts philosophy, a little more on radar, perhaps, digging into a little more of that implied intelligence stuff we were talking about, maybe some stuff on how to get in front of issues, how to be more productive with less time, you're in the right place. That's what we're going to be talking about today.
Yep. We have to do this part, which is our safe harbor. And I have an echo kind of in my head.
So show it for 5 seconds, then move on.
Yeah, so just means that we might change our minds about anything forward-looking that we're telling you. So who are we and why are we the ones talking to you about this? So Nate is the product manager for both alerts and our applied intelligence services, which are those platform services we were talking about this morning that power things like baselines and error profiles. And I'm the product manager for Radar, which is one of our new features, as well as for all of our platform capabilities. So between us, we cover a lot of ground, and we think about this stuff a lot because we both come from the software engineering world. I think AJ or Lou asked this morning, I think Lou asked how many people have carried a pager at some point in their career, and we both raised our hands. And so we have a lot of empathy, and we love being product managers at New Relic because we get to work on these kinds of problems, so hopefully to reduce your alert fatigue and help you spend more time in your happy place and less time in your hair on fire place. So.
That's right. So to kick this off, we wanted to start off with a quick survey and a little bit of data. And actually, we saw this data collected from my second favorite conference of the year. It's actually Monitorama. It takes place up in Portland, conveniently, in the spring. And this conference attracts people with titles like service reliability engineer, systems engineers, technical architects. All these kinds of people show up to this very popular conference. And these are the types of people that, for instance, if there was an underground electrical fire taking out all of the power to the venue, you'd want these people to basically pick it up for the whole conference for between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. and move it to an entirely different location without a hitch. So these...
Wait, and I didn't know this, but Nate told me yesterday that really happened.
Yeah, so
that's
if you
not like a
search
hypothetical.
electrical fire Monitorama, you'll see some interesting tweets going by throughout the night. Well, MookSoft was there as well, and they did a really interesting survey. And so I wanted to talk about some of the results there. Before I show you the results of the survey around this question, hey, what's your #1 monitoring challenge? I wanted to do a quick survey here to see if there's a little correlation. So quickly read over these 3 options, and then let's say if your #1 monitoring challenge is correlation across many tools. Let's see a quick show of hands. Okay, we've got a couple there. If it is collaboration across teams, couple, okay. Alert fatigue, noise, okay, interesting, okay. Well, I may have kind of tipped that off with the title of the talk. Funny enough, the results of that question were very similar to these attendees of the conference. So we're looking at over 65% of the people who were asked this question said, you know what, we're just getting killed by alert noise and this fatigue. Then they dug into this a little bit more, and they asked the question, okay, well, what's a lot? Like, what does fatigue look like? So what are you getting in terms of the number of alerts per month? Data's a little interesting here. Basically, I'm looking at this and saying, wow, 65% of the people who responded are getting thousands of alerts or more per month. So somewhere between 33 and 33 million per day. Some's a little maybe fishy there.
That's gotta hurt.
Regardless, I mean, a huge percentage of these respondents are just obviously inundated with a ton of alerts running from fire to fire. They're having a big problem with alert fatigue. Then they asked, how proactive is your company? And I thought this was super interesting as well because we got so many people saying alert fatigue is a huge problem, hundreds or thousands of alerts per month. But oh yeah, we're pretty proactive. We're probably about a 7. I'm like, well, how are you supposed to be proactive when you're just getting all of these alerts? So you can't really have both. So we wanted to really take the time to dig in to this during this talk and how we can solve this problem. Because alert fatigue it's a huge issue. It's about desensitization. It impacts your people. It impacts your business. So you've got people that are having really tough time with work-life balance, in this mode, generally dreading on-call, feeling like they can't support these poorly designed systems, maybe even just feel not empowered to solve the root cause. So job satisfaction is going to be a lot lower. And then you've got your business. It's also going to be impacted by alert fatigue. You've got incidents that are long running, maybe getting caught up in that noise, and customers are going to get impacted. They're not going to have a great time. And you can't mess with your service and your customer trust. You need to be up all the time. So between that and engineers spending a lot of time running from fire to fire versus prioritizing, maybe working on some new features, differentiating yourself between your competition, those are the things that you're paying when you have this alert fatigue issue.
So that's a lot. I mean, that really can affect both your team morale, what your lives are like, and your business. So it's a big problem, but we also think that it's a solvable problem, or at least it's an improvable problem. I can't solve these puzzles to save my life, so I'm very happy that we have an improvable way to do it using glue, which is just a silly way of saying that there's no nirvana around this stuff, but we do think that we can give you some tips that are going to help make your lives a little bit better, or maybe give you some different ways to think about it. So let's go into and introduce one way to think about kind of how you go about your work and how you use New Relic to enable that. And so we kind of think of 3 work modes in engineering. And the first is this reactive mode, right? You have an incident, you got that page, you got one of those billion alerts, right? And you've got to go fix something or address it, or at least know enough to knack it and say, go away, I'm going to ignore this one. And that's the immediate thing. And then you've got things where you're able to do something proactively, right? You've got some information that you're able to go, maybe you've got a warning, you see something is trending in a certain way, so you've got some time to go and get in front of a problem. And you get to be in that proactive space, and that feels good. And then we call the productive space, and that's what Nate was talking about, like, hey, I get to go build something that makes my product better than the person next door's, or that satisfies a customer need that they've been wishing that we could get to. And often that's kind of the most fun and creative part of our day, is where we get to kind of be in that productive space thinking about new things. But we don't think that this is exclusive. We're not trying to say you should never be reactive or proactive. We're saying is you're going to live your life in all 3 of these lanes, but we think you can manage sort of how much time you spend in each. So let's start with that one side of being very reactive, right? And that's this idea of, yes, something is broke. Or if you think of a store, the door's closed. Why are there locks in a 7-Eleven? Why would you ever want to go up to 7-Eleven? But if the door was locked, that would actually be a problem, right? So from a New Relic point of view, that's where we're bringing you tools to give you that base level of knowing that the door is always open, your customers can always get in. So whether you're looking through our synthetics or browser products, or you're looking at APM, there are some basic monitoring and basic alerts you can set up that are just going to give you that peace of mind, so that when you really do need to be reactive, you can be. A friend of mine, I was telling him I was giving this talk, and he said, so if I had my alert, like if my software was like perfect, I'd never get alerted. And I said, I really don't think that's the case, because you're always dependent on somebody upstream or downstream. Your ISP can go out, your disk can fail. There are always things. So being reactive is not a failure. It just means you're ready to react when you need to.
That's right. So I love this business analogy when you're talking about applications and services. So if your app or service is your business, make sure that the doors are open. Start there. But then there's a next step in what I would call like a little less reactive space. And this is going to look like doors open, customers can come in. You need to make sure a few things are working and working well. Lights are on, people are manning the cash registers, they can come in, perform the actions that they were expecting to in a reasonable amount of time, and have a good experience. So that next layer is where you're going to want to add some alerting into your application, especially your client-side layer. So you're going to want to measure things like latency. Is it fast? Checking things like error rates, making sure that it's available, that these transactions are coming back with the expected success rates. Is it typical? Checking the baselines, like looking at history, like is it acting like it normally does? And even using things like synthetic scripted monitors for correctness, checking those workflows, those multi-step things, making sure that each one is operating correctly and bringing back nice, fresh, correct data. So I mentioned typical, right? And Nadia, this morning, talked a little bit about NURCL baselines. And so I wanted to take a quick detour on this path that we're talking about in these work modes to dig a little bit more into our baselining technology, because we released it in the spring, and we're super excited about it. We want you to be as well. But as technical people and engineers, you're like, how does that work? I don't know if I trust it if I don't really know how this magic works. So we wanted to kind of pull back the curtains a little bit, show you a little bit about what's going on under the hood, so you'll be as excited as we are. So what are baselines? Boiling it down, baselines predict the future 1 minute at a time. And they do this looking at a bunch of history and creating models and looking at how things are acting certain times of day and day of week, and accommodating simple use cases which are tricky, like trending. So if you've got a key performance indicator for your service that's trending up or down, your service is slowly getting more popular, but that's a key metric for you to measure your service health. That can be hard with traditional thresholds to alert on, because eventually that metric is going to hit the threshold, then you're going to get a false alert. You'll go in, bump the threshold, and kind of rinse and repeat, and that's only going to be adding to that alert fatigue problem that we were talking about earlier. So baselines accommodates trend, so you don't have to. The other thing it does is discover seasons and cycles. So Nadia touched on this earlier, but the algorithms under the hood are looking for seasons and cycles that it can discover and learn. So if you've got a very common use case is an application that serves customers. Customers tend to use your stuff during business hours during the week. So you'll see different numbers for that metric between 9 and 5 Monday through Friday. Off hours, weekends tend to have a different profile. Baselines will pick up on those season cycles, accommodate for them, so your Tuesday at 2 p.m. Is going to look like the Tuesday at 2 p.m. All the previous weeks. So it will create that dynamic threshold and kind of follow along with it. And I'll show you an example, customer example of that in just a few slides. And then lastly, one of the under the hood things I wanted to talk about is our ensemble approach to algorithm selection. So this is a big mouthful, but I thought it was worthwhile to dig into because I'm super excited about this. I was working with the team when they implemented it very seamlessly, and we just saw a huge improvement in the quality of our baseline predictions for our customers. So what is this thing? Baselines are not something completely brand new. Competitors have had this, but generally they'll ask you to say, hey, pick your metric and then pick your algorithm. That's a lot to ask of a customer. They got to understand the kind of guts and the nature of their metric. They got to understand how algorithms work and make that right pairing, or else you're going to end up with another alert fatigue problem. So we thought there was a better way. Why not just choose and select the best of breed algorithm for a number of different use cases and just run them all? Make them compete against each other to make a better prediction, and then elect the best predictor as the leader, and it will send its results onto our alerts evaluation system. So you've got a number of algorithms running at the same time. Best predictor gets selected all the time. And then that allows us to do things really interesting, because as a 100% SaaS company, you can imagine us being able to test and introduce new algorithms for new use cases, tune existing ones. And this can all happen behind the scenes. And as we're deploying hundreds of times a day as well, these things can just incrementally add value and tune and improve the predictions that we're able to make for you, so you don't have to. So with NURCL baselines, one of the things I wanted to key in on that Nadia was talking about is that flexibility of being able to kind of find the data that matters to you. And I wanted to present a customer example from Ryanair. They really care about being able to sell tickets. So segment sold is something that they've always really cared about, and they care about it because it's very predictable week to week. So they had this kind of compare with last week widget on one of their insights dashboards, and this is something they just visually looked at ongoing. Is it different from last week by enough for me to want to investigate it? And they had this up for a long time, and then when we introduced NURCL baselines and had this flexibility to kind of get this custom event and attribute for the segment sold and be able to baseline on it, they just picked up that query, dropped it into Nurgle baselines, and immediately started to be able to operationalize on that. So you can see we're picking up with that gray band, that dynamic threshold, kind of following along. Hour of day, minute of day, day of week, all this stuff's getting picked up so that they can now know when there's maybe a drop-off during the day when their segment sold is high, maybe a weird spike during the middle of the night when you can see that it's really low. These kind of anomalies against history are things that they can now get notified about automatically. They don't have to watch that dashboard all day long. So that kind of ends the baseline detour, and we're going to hook back into our next segment.
I love that. There's some really super cool math behind all that, and if you like to nerd out on that, there's some blog posts up on newrelic.com specifically. So cool. Love that example. So so let's talk then. So we talked about reactive and kind of different tools to help you in that space. So let's talk about proactive tools. And so I'm going to talk more about New Relic Radar. I talked about this again this morning, but maybe you slept in and missed the keynote, so I'm going to give you a quick blurb about this. And again, we named it Radar because we think it helps you see through that cloud of data. So we're trying to do three things with this. We're trying to help you find the things that are most interesting and relevant. We're trying to help you prevent problems, and we're trying to help you fix them faster. So it kind of works in all three of those modes, really, right? A little bit looking behind, a little bit proactive, and a little bit productive. So I'm going to talk about each of those. We named it Radar because it is looking ahead and behind. And now I'm actually, yes, it is in fact my turn. I'm going to let you flip that over because it's your computer. And there's a way to flip this over to live software. I did, by the way, change my password on my laptop. If you saw this morning when AJ said my password was password, it is no longer password. So I was waiting for security to send me a note, and I wanted to be proactive and get in front of that. So all right, cool. So what you're seeing here is an example of Radar. So think about Radar as two things. One is a set of services that is constantly looking at your data and trying to understand what's interesting, and going on, and looking at it sort of across lots of different axes, if you will, lots of different ways we can slice and dice your data. But then on the left, what I'm seeing is a personalized feed. So this is probably the only place in New Relic, other than maybe if I built a dashboard and locked it down so no one could see it but me, where I'm getting a view that is unique to me. And we're using both what you tell us about what you care about, and we're using machine learning algorithms like collaborative filters to be able to prioritize and recommend content for you, because there's lots of stuff going on in your systems, and what Nate might care about, what I might care about, are going to be different if we have like very different jobs or we're on different teams and so forth. So that's what Radar's focused on doing. So I want to give you an example. I'm going to kind of take you through a couple stories of where Radar works in each of these spaces. So this is one where maybe Radar is actually looking behind you and saying, you know what, you are going really fast. Lou talked this morning about we're all trying to go faster, no matter what speed we're at. We're all accelerating. So one of the things Radar will do is say, hey, you know what, you were driving so fast that you actually might have missed this really cool big ball of string on the side of the road. You might want to go back and take a look at that. So only in this case, it didn't find a ball of string. What it found was a performance regression. So what it's showing me here is there was a deployment done, and really kind of suspiciously close to that deployment, there was a strange behavior in my app. And that might be an indicator that there was a problem. And then Radar goes one further and actually runs root cause analysis. This is another bit of intelligence we've been building into the platform that actually is going back and using all that trace data and all the other things we know to be able to identify other correlations that suggest where you want to start. So this is our root cause analysis, and it's saying here, hey, we saw you had a deployment, we saw you had a spike in errors, and now actually we think this particular method might be where you want to start. So super helpful in letting me see the problem and move right into a spot where I can do something about it. Again, kind of giving me that situational awareness, I might use some of that same baseline math that Nate was talking about, and we actually use those same algorithms in Radar to just look through your key metrics and identify something where maybe you don't have an alert, but there's still an anomaly going on, and we want to flag that for you and let you know so you can decide if you want to do something about that. And then one more example, and then I'll talk about kind of moving into a productive space. This is one where we had a customer. When one of the customers we rolled this out to, one of the very first customers, in fact, I think like maybe the third, and got a note from their CTO saying, hey, you have this card that finds an N+1 anti-query, which is a super inefficient query that you can write if you're not really paying attention to what you're doing. And we can actually detect that. We can see the signature of that. And we let them know, and they were able to go and fix it that same day and speed up their website performance. So this is the kind of stuff we're looking at. And as we think even longer term, we want to keep adding this content to the platform to help you move in that direction. So the last thing I want to show you is one of our newest cards that we've introduced to Radar, and that is a kind of inefficient AWS Amazon Web Systems. I always just say AWS. Services. Yeah. I always just say AWS. AWS, you all know what it is. Why am I telling you? So inefficient AWS services. Because when you're using a cloud provider, whether that's Amazon or Google or IBM or our friends at Microsoft who are here today, you want to maximize your usage, or you want to get every bit of value out of those pennies that you're sending them every minute. And so one of the things that we're doing now is we're taking that infrastructure data and we're running an analysis on it to see if you actually are underusing hosts, because then we can make a recommendation where you might want to save money. So part of my career, I worked for a long time in IT for a major insurance company, and I know when you're feeling kind of like a cost center, it's really awesome to be able to go to your boss and say, you know what, today I didn't write some new code. Today what I did was I found a way to save you money on AWS. And so that's another piece of where we want to get you into that productive space where you're able to go and really think about where is your business going and what do I want to do, how can I help, and whatever my role is to get me there. So that is a little bit more of Radar than you saw this morning.
Cool. All right, so we'll go back to slides in a moment here. See if I can pull this off. All right, so we're kind of on the last leg of this journey here, moving into that productive space that we were talking about, that productive mode. And this is powered by that new Relic applied intelligence we were talking about this morning. And it's a theme you're going to start seeing proliferate across all of our products.
See, I started the tongue tripping, and now you picked up on it. Nice.
So, kind of boiling it down, the basic premise is we want to make sure that in the times you need to be the most productive, that you're able to do so in even less time. So we've talked a little bit about the services, a few of the services already that are powered by this NR AI services.
AWS. Yeah. Okay.
Dynamic baselines is under that umbrella. All that technology I was just talking about, the ensemble of algorithm selection, all that good stuff is under our AI smart services. Some of the root cause analysis going into the card producers that are in Radar is powered by that as well. And we talked a little bit in the keynote this morning about error profiles, and I wanted to dig a little bit more into that. But really, all of these services, it's about choosing the right approach to solving the problem. And as Lou was saying, it's not that kind of overhyped, artificial intelligence for everything. It's, whether it's simple math, advanced statistics, some machine learning, some deep learning, picking the right approach and applying it to solve the problem so that, we're surfacing simple interfaces with synthesized data to help you make decisions very quickly and be more productive. So I'll also switch right into a demo here. Let's see how we're doing. All right, cool. So I'm in APM, I'm looking at my web portal app. I'm in our error analytics space. This is a place I'll generally be if I'm trying to be productive. And I've got a little bit of an error rate you can see. It's below 0.5%. But I'm trying to lower that noise. I'm trying to eliminate some errors. And so I'm in this mode where I'm trying to be very productive, get that noise level down so that when there is an issue, I'll be able to see it. And it won't be kind of masked by some of this error noise. So I'm kind of looking at error classes and things, and I'm like, where do I start? And so as Nadia was talking about, one common thing that we even saw internally our engineers doing was, I care about these error classes, give me a sense of the ones that are the most prevalent, but I'm just going to kind of go back and look for some type of pattern. maybe it's response code and kind of this guess and check, like back to grouping. You can start to identify some interesting patterns. But like Nadia said this morning, computers are really good at doing this. So you can stick to this error class view. Choose something you want to maybe solve. Say like this null pointer exception. I want to figure out, why is this happening? How do I get rid of it? Moving into error profiles, looking at this null pointer exception, the context is preserved. And essentially what we're doing is looking at all of these null pointer exception errors during this time window, looking at every dimension of data on those errors that we're capturing, taking all the succeeding transactions and doing a fit test, basically looking at the presence and distribution of every dimension and telling you, like, these are the weirdest things that you should be looking at and surfacing those at the top. So I've kind of been relating this internally as like, it's kind of like that if I looked at these errors and I could just like type a Google search to say, why is this error occurring? And I would expect the first page to have my answer. And so as an application developer kind of scanning through this list of top attributes, I'd expect the answer to be in there somewhere. So as I look down this list, it's like, interesting. All of these errors have username cannot be null. And all of these errors are on the login page. Okay, well, looks like somebody is constantly trying to log in without a username. That shouldn't really kick off a null pointer exception. This shouldn't be elevating my error rate. There's probably a better way. Going into solution space really quickly, I could probably just throw a little bit of JavaScript on there and make sure the form doesn't submit, if there's empty values. And then it'll stop from hitting our application server, raising the error rate. Easy. I can probably do that with a cup of coffee, right?
Nice.
So that's kind of digging into error profiles. We'll switch back to the slides and kind of wrap this up.
All right. So it's strangely red on here. All right. So what's our advice to you? Kind of like wrap this up, right? So we wanted to give you some things to think about to kind of, reduce your alert fatigue, spend more time where you want it by giving you sort of tools. So the first thing is, think about where you want to spend your time. Like paying attention is often the first step towards making progress.
That's right. And don't skip that first base step of laying the foundation. Make sure your business is open. Make sure people can get in the door. Set up those hosts not responding alerts. Set up those synthetic monitors. Make sure that people can just get to it first and that it's up.
Yeah, nice peace of mind. And then you can kind of go into now what is the customer experience like, right? So think about the things that matter to your customers. Is it checkout time? Is it search? Is it browse? Like, what are the things that they care about and what are they doing? And then how do I work on improve the performance and quality of the things that my customers care about the most? So then these other tools can start to help you there.
Right, and then moving into that proactive space, Radar is going to be rolling out and working its advice into your workflow so that you can start to be proactive. Take the time and some of this advice to make sure that you're getting ahead of it and they don't end up causing alerts that could have been prevented if you would have just been able to spend some time working on those actions and advice that Radar is giving you.
Yeah, as a product manager for Radar, I often say I want to move things from like waking me up at Saturday night to like having my coffee Monday morning, right? So if we can like just shift all that information a week so that it's at like a really convenient time of day, wouldn't that be awesome? So that's one of our like behind the scenes goals. And then finally, our advice, it should come as no surprise to a crowd that's here at Future Stack, is have a curious mindset. There's a wealth of data in New Relic, right? Lou was talking about how you really can't go to a meeting with Lou without him pulling up a dashboard. It's true. He almost showed one live in the keynote, I can tell you that. So be curious. Look at that data. And think about what it's doing. Think about what these baseline alerts can do for you. Think about how you can add custom attributes to make those baselines work even harder for you, like our friends at Ryanair did. If you can get that data into NERCL, you've got baselines now on that data. So think about it. Some cool stuff you could do.
very cool stuff. So with that, I think we have a few minutes. We might even be able to.
I'm on microphone migration, so just raise your hand and I'll come over to you. I saw you up first.
Yeah, how long do you kind of let the monitoring run to establish a baseline?
Good question. So, when you create a condition, it makes sense to, do some bootstrapping. Like you want to prime the model to make sure that it's going to, be as effective as possible right out of the gates. So looking at, 4 weeks of data is going to get you a really good set of baselines for that weekly seasonality and be able to discover so that once you start alerting, it's going to give you a good experience. Another thing we do, if you interact with our UI when setting up a baseline condition that nobody else does, is we'll give you that longer preview, looking over like 7 days of data, and then adjusting the sensitivity, and you can see the dynamic thresholds kind of moving in and out. Being able to estimate and show you exactly, over the last 7 days, this is how many times it would have triggered given your current settings, so that when you save that condition, you've got confidence that you've set up something that you're willing to wake up for.
Right, and I just want to elaborate on one thing Nate said, to be clear, is that when you first create that alert, we are using that historical data. So you can start using that alert immediately, but over time, we do see that it improves as the actual baseline has had a chance to just run. But because we have all your historical data, unless you just turned on that agent this morning, we're going to use, that 4 weeks of data that he talked about.
Speaking, how far back in time can you look?
The longer the condition is available for, it's using all of that data. So obviously there's weighted average, so it's all of it is, the existence of the condition, all the data is considered. There's higher weight towards more recent data, but it's all being used in the coefficients that we store for the modeling.
Other questions? Got you over here.
So the error profile service looks really good, really valuable. We have 10 websites, most of them in WordPress, some of them in Drupal, and we get a lot of the errors under APM. And I use them all the time, and I report that in the Jira ticket to my developers. So how does the error profile service, how is that different from the errors feature it's an APM now?
So it complements error analytics. So error analytics gives you a way to just arbitrarily slice and dice all of those errors in the time window that you're looking at. So you can do your own kind of manual discovery however you want. What Error Profiles is doing is kind of automating a workflow to basically surface the attributes that are the weirdest compared to the succeeding transactions to kind of float up to the top, pieces of metadata that will likely hint you at the problem at hand to help you solve it.
I think we might have time for one more question. If anybody, we got one over here. Okay.
Hi, thanks. Just want to know if you handle holidays. We're a B2B company and Monday through Friday is an obvious pattern, but then are we going to light up on Labor Day Monday?
So one of the things about the algorithm behind this is, to go back to this gentleman's question, it does need historical data. So a Labor Day only occurs once a year. So to be able to have enough data to get to a Labor Day, it would be like 3 years before we could have anything meaningful. So we don't catch those like Black Friday type events, if you will, but we're going to catch typical behavior. Would you add anything to that, Nate?
Yeah, the most common seasonalities are like day of week, hour of week, that type of thing, and those are what we're going to perform the best at.
You need enough data to train the model, and it just doesn't scale, so to speak, for like a Labor Day type situation.
Do you have one quick question?
Just to follow up to that, if you know ahead of time that those are issues, is there any way to seed that into your model?
We've talked about that. It's kind of an interesting, interface problem. Like, what does it look like to try and allow users to input like a seed, like, hey, expect this type of thing? And that's a hard problem. It's interesting. I'd love to talk about that a little bit more and like how many of those you have per year.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
I've got one more question from me.
Wait, you work for New Relic.
No,
I know you.
I thought I'd take advantage of the opportunity. How important is it to have other New Relic products installed? Like, do you pull information from across all the different product lines? Like, what if I'm running synthetics infrastructure? Do I get better or more valuable data out of Radar and the other things you mentioned, or how does that work?
I mean, I can talk from alerting perspective, and Nadia can probably talk from a radar perspective. I mean, alerting wise, like, you know, we talked about layering, right? And so that, you know, is your business open? You know, you're going to want to start with like infrastructure, and synthetics are great ways of testing for that. Moving up a layer into like customer experience, you know, we've got mobile, browser, synthetics as well, APM. You know, that's kind of that second order layer that we were recommending. In order to be totally comprehensive, you need them all. From an operations perspective, to be able to layer in that alerting and make sure that you're getting notified when anything happens across your full stack.
And Radar absolutely looks at our whole product suite and will continue to do so and grow. We're probably, to be frank, we're probably kind of APM and infrastructure accented right now, and but we know we'll be adding more to cover more around synthetics and browser, though we already have some content for them. So there's no limit on what we can do. Any data in New Relic, whether it's the metric data or event data, we can get at, and we do.
All right, and we'll end with any New Relic data. You can do anything. So that's a good place to end.